All right, that does it. Let me know if you can see my screen. You can see my screen now, right? Can we see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, good. Let's use this. Okay, so we just finished looking at comments, right? And we said it's just a way for you to drop a message for yourself in your code. Okay, that's what it is. Now in Python, there are different ways of making comments, and two ways, not really different ways. There are two ways. The second one is like a backdoor, not cheat. It's not as if they intended it for it. The normal way is to use hash. So the moment I put hash here, I can come here and write anything I like. Python will not complain. But notice the moment I move to another line and I continue with anything I like, Python is saying well done. No. Why? Because this line now has gone out of the line of a comment. If I want to continue, what do? I put hash here again. Python will say, okay, it's a comment again. It's none of my business. Do we understand that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So that's what a comment is. Now, next, let's move to what variables. Now, to understand variables, I'm actually going to write a piece of code. We are going to print out a story. Okay, let's print out a story here. And the story is going to be simple. There is a farmer. There is a farmer named John, comma. He is 70 years old, comma. I'm going to move to the next line. I just hit enter to move to the next line. But the thing is this. Okay, you know what? Instead of using a long story like this, because I don't want to introduce a new concept that will take time, let's write the story line by line. There is a, oops, I need my quotation mark back there. There is a farmer named John. He's 70 years old. Let me do another print. John likes farming, okay, comma, but hates being 70. Let's have another print. Just another line. Maybe John likes eating carrots from his farm. Let's stop there. Now, we have 3 lines of print statements here. Let me comment out. Now, look at another good use of comment. Do you see this line of code? Print, she's a Nigerian. Now, this line of code, I don't need it anymore, but I don't want to delete it because I might need it later. Do you see the situation where I'm in now? I don't need it right now, but I don't want to delete it because I might need it later. So instead of deleting it, do you know what I can do? I can make it a comment too. And Python now would also ignore this line. So though it's there, but it would look as if it was never there. You get the gist there? All right. With that being said now, okay, there's a farmer named John. He's 70 years old. John likes farming, but hates being 70. And John likes eating carrots from his farm. Now, if you notice this story I've written here, how many times did I mention John? John, about 3 times. Now, this is a very short story. But imagine if this story was like 1,000 lines. I'll probably mention John up to 500 times. And every time, I'll be writing John. Apart from John, you notice I've written 70 more than 2 times now. Did you see that? Now, imagine if this story was like 1,000 lines. And then when we were done, our boss in the office came and said, oh, sorry, the farmer's name is not John, it's James. Do you know what that means? It means we have to go to 1,000 lines to change John to James. Of course, I know with system, copy and paste is easy. But you know, even with copy and paste, you see, there are errors that copy and paste will give you that you never recover from. So now, how can we fix this? Let me introduce you to what we call variables. I'm not going to define it yet, but let's use it first so you can see its importance. I can come to the top here and I'll write a variable. I'll give the variable a name. Don't worry, I'll give you the definition of a variable. For now, just watch what I'm doing. I'll write a variable called John. Now, instead of putting John everywhere here, look at the trick I'm going to do. You know what? Let me make this a bit easy. Because I don't want to complicate this for you guys. I want to make it as easy as possible. Let's have another print here that will say is 70 years old. Okay, good. I like that. Let's also break this one down. I want to make this as simple as possible. Let's have another print that will say, but hates being 70. Okay, perfect. Now, you know, I have John now in about 3 or 4 different lines. Now, I have created this thing at the top here, which I called a variable. But the name of this variable is name. Watch what I can do. Okay, there is a farmer named, okay, there's supposed to be John here. There's a farmer named John. Now, instead of John here, watch what I will do. I will get rid of John and I will say plus name. Okay, now what this plus name is doing is taking the place of where John should have been. Are we together? Okay, yes. Let me try to break it down. I know some of you are saying, but John is supposed to be inside this quotation mark here, right? That's what some of you are thinking. But let me quickly explain what we are doing there. You know, you remember when we were in school now, in those KG days, our teachers will be teaching us, they'll be saying 1 and 1, 11, 1 and 2, 12. Now, if you remember what they are teaching, they are actually saying 1 and 1, not 1 plus 1. Take note, 1 and 1, not 1 plus 1. So that tells us that when we take a number and another number, okay, and we join them together, not add, we join them, we actually get a combination of the two numbers, like 1 and 2, 12, right? Now, to break this down, if I have a variable, a string saying Stephen, okay, and I do plus is a boy. Did you see this? Stephen is a string, plus is a boy is another string. At the end of the day, what do you think I'll have? I'll have Stephen is a boy, which is a combination of this string. So we have one big string that will tell us Stephen is a boy. So a combination of this string and this string. Do we all flow with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. But again, if you look at this well, you will notice there is an issue, a small issue here. There is no space between Stephen and is. Did you notice that? But that is because even in the actual strings that we join together, there is no space. If we want to create a space, there is 2 ways we can do it. We can put the space after Stephen and it will come here, or we put it before is and it will come here, because even space is a string too. Do we catch that reference there? Is anybody lost about what I just did? We all follow along. All right, perfect. I think somebody is trying to join. Let's admit them. They are the latecomers, but let's forgive them. All right. So now, look at this now. Now that we understand this, this is the same thing I'm trying to do here now. You know, there is a farmer named space plus, you know, what am I storing in name? What is name equal to?
John.
Exactly. John. So in actual fact, what I'm saying is there is a farmer named John. This is what I'm saying. But instead of putting John here, I will put name. Exactly. Let's go ahead. You flow along with that now, right? Perfect. I like that. Okay. When you realize, wow, it's simple. All right. So now let's go ahead and do that everywhere we have John. So in this place of John here now, I will say name plus, then where else do we have John again? Yeah, I will say name plus. Did you see this? Perfect. Now let me delete this other thing we have up here. We don't need that. Now, if I run this program now, you will see that it will still run fine. Let's rerun this. Did you see? There's a farmer named John. He's 70 years old. John likes farming, but hates being 70. John likes eating carrots from his farm. But now with this new approach now, if our manager comes to us and say, oh, sorry, the name of the farmer is not John, it's James. Do you know all we have to do? Come to this place where we set name equals to John and change it to James. One single place. And if we execute this now, boom, our code will still work fine. And the new story now is what? There's a farmer named, okay, we need to rerun. I've not done that. Good. There's a farmer named John. He's 70. James likes farming, but hates being 70. Did you get the trick there now? So instead of going to 1,000 lines to change John to James, we all did it in a single line. Why? Because of this concept called variable. Now, what is a variable? A variable is nothing but a memory location where you can store values. And then whenever you need the values, you just call the name of the variable and it will give you back the value. Now, this actually makes coding really easy for you because you don't have to go to all the part of your code where you were supposed to write that value to change it. You can just store the value in a simple variable, and whenever you need the value, you call the variable. Now, this is a very simple approach. Let's look at another option. Let's imagine I want to print out my account number in case some of you want to transfer money there, right? Now, I print out that's not my account number. If you try to transfer, that's not my account number, like I said. Now, this is the number I want to print, right? Or instead of printing a number like that, let's print a number with some zeros. How many zeros? Let's go with 1, 2. Okay, let's go with 6 zeros. Is that even 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see, when you were counting zeros, it can be confusing. Now, let's say we wanted to print this in about 10 different lines. So we want to print this number in 10 different lines. Now, let's assume we can copy and paste, that our system does not support copy and paste. Do you know what that means for us? We have to manually come again, print. Okay, since it's a number, we don't need to put it in quotation mark. You remember that, right? Good. So let's print this again. Print. Let's print this again. I think I've made some mistakes, right? Some zeros are more than some, right? Did you notice that? I think I have 7 here and I'm having 8 here. Now, as humans, we are prone to errors. And sometimes when you are working with figures like this, the worst thing you can ever do is to keep writing figures over and over and over again in your code. Because if you make one mistake, imagine when you are working on a banking app, you're supposed to transfer money from somebody's account to another person's account, and then you are writing the figure over again. You now made mistake and put extra 0 where 0 is not supposed to be. Sure, you know, say now 0 differentiate 1,000 naira and 10,000 naira. So because of this, when we are working with numbers like this, instead of always repeating it, we save ourselves the stress and store it in a variable. We can say num, that you can call your variable whatever you like. Num is equal to, put the number there. So whenever you need that number, you just say num. This way it's easy for you, because if you made a mistake, the only place you have to go change it is where? Up here. Have we seen the importance of variables now? Good. All right, so that is variables. Now, whenever you are naming your variables, you can use any name you like. Although there are rules in naming variables, I can't go over all of them. But the most important one is you can't start a variable name with a number. You can't say 45 num. Your variable must always start with a letter, but you can put a number after or in between if you like. But you must not start with a number. You can't also start with a special character. It's not allowed. You can only start with a letter. Another quick one is sometimes you might want to join 2 words together to name your variable. What I mean is, let's say I want to write a variable called total students. You know, those are 2 words. So instead of saying total and space students, this is not allowed. What you can do is put underscore to separate them, or you use camel casing, this approach. Camel casing means the first word starts with all lowercase, but the next word, the first letter of the next word starts with a capital letter. Can we see that in action there? So that's what Pascal casing is. But in Python, the most common one is using underscore to separate words. But you said what?
That's snake facing snake.
Yeah, snake, exactly. All right, so this is a common one in Python, but whichever one you use, nobody will judge you for it. But what I can tell you as a beginner is be consistent with one. If you are going to be going with this approach, use it. If you are going to be going with camel casing, use it. If you are going to be going with Pascal casing, use it. Don't be mixing it together, because if you keep mixing together like that, believe me, the last thing you want when you are coding is to be confused. Is it Pascal casing I used? Was it camel? Or was that's the last thing you want when you are coding? Because when you are coding, your brain is busy. So the last thing you want to do to your brain is stress it unnecessarily with unnecessary things. So just have one pattern. If you're going to be using this approach, use it so that you don't have to be guessing, is it Pascal? Because me now, I know myself. Whenever I join two words in Python, I use this approach here. So when I'm coding, I don't even think about it. I just go ahead because I know that is what I normally do. All right? So just have one pattern of working with your code. Perfect. Now that we are done with that, we've covered quite some here. Now that we are done with that, we want to talk about another topic in Python called functions. Functions. Now, to break this down, what are functions? Well, a function in any programming language is just a block of code, okay, that you can write once and reuse as many times as you like. Now, what do I mean by that, and why do I even need a function? Let's say I'm working on a banking app, okay, and you know one basic features of banking app is to be able to send money, right, from one account to the other. Now, since I know that I'm going to always be sending money from one account to another, in that my banking app, I can write a function that the job will be for transferring money. So whenever I want to send money or anybody wants to send money, I use the function. Now, let me explain a typical example of that. Before we look at functions, let's try to write a simple Python program that can add up two numbers. Okay? So I'll use variables in this case now. So, you know, when you want to add up two numbers, you first get the two number, right? So let's have a variable for num1. Num1 will be 10. That's the first number. Num2 will be 15. That's the second number. Then sum is equals to num1 plus num2. Is anybody confused with what I've done here? Anybody confused? Perfect. That's good. Now, if I am done with this now, I can now say print. What do I need to print now? Sum, right? Good. Let me go ahead and comment all this other code we have up here. I don't want them to show. Okay, good. If I run this program now, if I go ahead and run this program, let me rerun. Did you say, it said sum is equals to what? 25, right? Is that true? Is 10 plus 15 equals to 25? All right, good. So we know that is correct. Now, what if I want to add up another set of numbers now? In this case, we want to add 5 plus 6. You know, I have to rewrite all of this from beginning again, right? So I have to come down again, define another set of variable. I'll say num3 equals to 5, num4 equals to 6, and then sum2 or sum1. You know, the first one we just call it sum. So let's call this one, because you can't have two different variables with the same name. They will override each other. Do you understand? Do you understand what I mean? If I come here now and I call this one sum and I say equals to num3 plus num4. Okay, this sum here, because it has the same name with this sum, it will override this one. We don't want that. So we'll change the name to sum1. Now, when we are done, we'll print sum1. If we run this, of course, it will execute. So the first one is 25. The second one is what? 11. What if we want to add another number, another 2 number again? We have to go and write another code again to add. Did you notice that we are just repeating the same thing over and over again now? And every time we need to do is we are writing about 5 lines of code. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code to do it. Which means if they give us 2 sets of numbers 10 times to add each of them together, we have to write all of this code 10 times. And every time you are writing it, you'll be thinking of variable name to use. Okay, well, the last one was num3. I'll use num6 here. The last one was sum2. I'll use sum4 here. It is stressful. But see how we can fix this with a function. Now, like I always do, I'll first write the function. You will see it in action before I explain it. So I'm going to write a function here. To write a function, we say def. Def means define. Okay, it's more like telling the programming language, hey, I want to write a function. So we say def, followed by the name we are giving the function. You can give your function any name, but please follow the same naming convention I gave you for variables. Okay, the name should not start with a number and all of that. So let's call this function add. Then to tell it that is a function, we need to open and close brackets. This will register it now that this is a function. Then put semicolon there. Like I said, I will explain this when we are done. But for now, just see it in action. Now, this function, I will tell it that it's expecting 2 numbers, num1 and num2. Don't worry, I will explain it. Okay. So when we are done, I'll just tell it to print num1 plus num2. Now let me use this function to do all this rubbish we have been doing up here. You will see function at work now. The first numbers we added together was what? 10 and 15, right? Watch this magic. I'm going to say add, open bracket, pass 10, 15. Let me run this. Did it still work? Did you see 25 there? Now, what is the second number we added? 5 and 6, Abi. See another magic. Call add again. Put 5, 6. Run this again. Did you notice it still worked? If I want to add another set of numbers again, I will call add again. I'm passing the numbers, maybe 6 and 9. Run this again. It will still work. Now that we are done, let me define function for you again so that you can try to connect it. A function is a block of code, okay, that you can write once and reuse it as many times as you like. Now, to follow that definition, this is the block of code here. We only wrote it once, right? But do you see how many times we called it? 3 times. Now, how did I write this function, or how do we write a function in Python? To write a function, you start with a def keyword to tell Python that this is a function. Then you give it a name. Then you open a bracket and you close the bracket. Now, sometimes there are some functions that you don't need to pass any value inside. Okay? You don't need to pass anything inside of it. In this case, we needed to pass a number because we want the function to be adding 2 numbers. That's why we told it that, hello, this function, whenever I'm going to call you, I will give you 2 numbers. And you can call the number num1 and what? Num2. Now, inside the function, this is a code block here. Did you guys notice that this print here that I have is not starting from the very first line? Did you notice that? Instead of starting from the beginning, I tabbed it or spaced it. Now, this is the part of Python I told you guys I really don't like. Okay, it makes things easy for beginners. Now, let me write a function for you in JavaScript. Don't worry about the fact that it's JavaScript. Just try to flow with what I'm trying to explain. Now, in JavaScript, this same function we wrote here, we'll write it as function add num1, num2, and then we'll have, did you guys notice this curly bracelet I open here? Now, in JavaScript, I can go ahead and write anything I like inside this curly bracelet. Now, because I have an opening curly bracelet here and a closing curly bracelet, what this is telling JavaScript that any code inside this curly bracelet is part of this function add. Did you get it?
Yes.
So whenever I call add, what I'm telling you is that execute all of this code. But in Python, we don't have curly bracelets. What we use is semicolon and indentation. So what we do is we put in semicolon, and any code we want to be inside the function, instead of starting at the beginning, we tab it. So I can have this code more than 3 lines. But what I have done right now, since all of this line were tabbed, why is this pop-up happening? Since all of this line, we tab all of this line. What it's trying to say is that all these lines are part of this function. Do we catch that? Do we catch that?
Yes.
But take note, the moment I tab this one out, this line is no longer part of it. It is only those lines that are tabbed that will be taken as part of the code block, this code block we have here. And that's why I like the way JavaScript explains it. But well, I think with this explanation, it's a bit clear. Whenever you see Python code and you see semicolon here, and the next thing you saw were tabs, here, just know that all of this tab is trying to say that this our function add, all of this line are part of that function. Do we catch that?
Okay. Yes.
All right, perfect. So now that we are done explaining how to write a function, whenever you write a function, see, let me get rid of all of this line and this one too. Good. We just have our function line. Now, did you notice I have a print inside the function, right? Let me run this code. Did you see we don't get any output? Let me rerun. Did you see no output on our console? Did you notice that? Why? Should be whenever we have print, the print is supposed to print now. So why are we not getting anything? Well, like I told you, a function, okay, I've not told you this, but this is another thing about a function. A function would only execute when you call it or invoke it. If you don't call it, if you don't invoke it, it is sleeping. It will not execute. I know most of us used to watch all those African magic movie, or you know all those herbalist movie. When they want to invoke their gods, they have to call the name 3 times. Take it to be in this scenario now. This function right here is like a god here. But it doesn't execute until you call it. So in order for it to work, you have to call it. And how do you call a function? Simple. Write the name. You know the name of this function is add, right? So write the name, then open. Now this function is expecting we call these things parameters. It's expecting you to pass in 2 parameters. So you have to open the curly bracelet and pass it the value. In this case, the numbers we want to add first is 10, 15. Now, what this function will do is this. How it will execute is this. The moment it reach this line, it will execute this function. It will pass 10 to num1. You know, note their position. You know, 10 is the first one here, right? And num1 is the first one here. So it will give 10 to num1, give 15 to num2. Then it will come inside the function and try to execute it. You know, inside the function, we are printing what? Num1 plus num2. What is our num1? Who can tell us what num1 is?
10.
Exactly. Plus, what is num2? 15. So if we go ahead now and say 10 plus 15, boom, and then it will print it out for us. If we execute this now, we get 25.
25.
That is basically how it executes. And the good thing about a function, like I said, you can call it as many times as you like. And it will keep on working as long as you pass a value to it. Does this draw our attention to a function we have been using since? Do you people realize we have been using a function since in Python? Let me tell you the function we have been using. Print. You know, when we call print, we open bracket and close it, Abi. That is a function. But the thing with this print function is it does not expect anything. Did you notice that? It does not expect anything. We can actually write a function that does not expect anything. Let's do an example. I can say def greet, okay, a function to greet. Def greet. Do you see this function is not expecting anything? And all it will do is it will print hello, how are you doing? Oops, this pop-up is closing my screen. So print will say hello, how are you doing? And then if I come down now and I call this function greet, you know it's not expecting anything, right? So we don't have to pass anything. If I go ahead and execute now, did you see we get 25, hello, how are you doing? So that is to tell you that the print we have been using since is a function too. But the thing with a print is it is an inbuilt function. Now, inbuilt functions are those functions that the people who wrote Python have written for us. So we don't have to write it ourselves. We can use it whenever we want to use it. But then we can write our own function, which we have proven by writing this greet function and this add function. Did we catch that?
No.
All right. So if you've got any question at this point, we are going to spend the next like 3 to 5 minutes going over this. If you've got a question, please feel free to ask.
So whenever we want to use that def function, you have to put add if you want to use number.
No. This add is the name I gave to the function. You can name your function anything you like, just like your variable. Okay? But I called it add because of the work it's doing. Which work is that function doing for us?
And so add number.
Exactly. So keep this at the back of your mind. Whenever you are naming your variable or your function, always try to give them descriptive name. A name that would describe what they are doing. For example, if I was to write a function to multiply two numbers now, I might call the function multiply or multiply two numbers. Now, that name alone, whenever I see the name, it already tells me what the function is doing. So I don't have to be thinking, imagine we wrote a function now for adding number, but we now call the function transfer. The moment you see a function called transfer, what would you think? You will not think it's adding numbers now.
That's true.
So it's very important that you give your functions descriptive name. Names that will describe what the function is doing. All right? Same thing with your variables too. When you are naming your variables, give them descriptive name. Don't have a variable that is storing total number of students and you just call it count. Because the truth is, when you are reading your code, I told you coding alone and work. You want to try to relieve yourself of unnecessary stress. Imagine if somebody gives me a code now, say, sir, I'm trying to calculate the numbers of students in my code and he's giving me a wrong answer. And I'll say, okay, show me your code, let me see. And then he named his variable, count, Nigeria, South Africa. Those were the names of his variables. Even the variable names alone is already confusing to me. I'll be lost as to what's this guy trying to do. But imagine if there was a line he wrote total number of students equal to something. The moment I see it, I know, oh, this is the line where it's having that problem. Why? Because the variable is descriptive. Do we catch that?
Yeah. I do have a question.
All right.
You said the function, from the ones you gave in the examples, we have print.
Yes.
Like in the
yes.
functions.
Yes.
Is it possible to have like two prints, like the one that is now outside the function?
Yes. See, any code you write inside the function is inside the function. You can still have print outside. It doesn't affect that one inside. Okay.
You're getting the same result.
You would still get. See, just know that whenever you call print, its job is to print to this terminal we have. This is our terminal here. That's the job of print. So either you are printing inside a function or outside a function, it will still do its job. The only difference between this print outside and the one inside a function is that This one outside would always execute, but this one inside the function will only execute when you execute the function.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
All right. So any other question, please? Please feel free to ask questions. So it shows that you guys are following.
I was raising up my hand.
Oh, so sorry. So I'm using one screen because my inverter went off. So I'm not seeing our meeting space right now. I'm just looking at my code. So sorry about that. Feel free. Okay, Ibukun, right?
Yes.
Please ask your question.
So I can't see the screen anymore.
Sorry. That's why I had it up.
So I want to ask, this is function, and you said this DEF is defined, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this function we are defining, this add function we are defining.
Yes.
In what cases are we going to have, just like the JavaScript you are trying to have, the way Java would have it the other time?
Yes. Yes.
What if we want to define more than one function? Okay, for example, after this add, we want to put subtract.
Of course.
How will everything look like?
Of course, we already have an example. Yeah, I get your question. We already have an example of that already. You see, we have a function called add here. We already have one called greet. Do you see that?
Yes.
If you want to have subtract now, I can come here and say dev. If I want to call it sub, let me just call it sub, open bracket, and this is already the function. You can go ahead and write anything you want in it. That's already a function there.
Okay, so that means there has to be another definition for it. It's not
exactly. See,
under this add.
Exactly. See, a function is like you are registering it in the memory of Python. If I look at this, if I move that function, if I come and write this function inside this other function, did you notice that this function now, there's a tab inside it? There's a tab with it. Did you notice the tab?
Yes.
If I come here now and I do sub inside, this function will be like I registered it inside this other function. Unless you are experienced, of course, that is possible. But for now, what we are dealing with is just individual. So def, sub, this is a different function on its own here. So this def keyword is like, we are telling Python, you see, I want to create a new function. This is the name of the function, and this will be the body of the function. All right? Okay.
So it's one function per time.
Yes.
I think my second question is, this is the structure of the end of everything, even after defining the function, in the print, I would have to say come back, pump out the function, just like you mentioned.
Yes. Come again. I really did not catch that well.
Okay, my thought about the structure of the function would have been after the end of the root, it's just like having print
Yes.
to be the last column. Like we have print to be the last, and then we just print whatever we want to do the next.
Yes.
I noticed that carefully. You see, the thing here after the print, we still call out the add, and then
Yes, let me try to explain this in a different way. Take, in I think, is it in economics or was it in home, which I don't really remember. We have this concept of division of labor, right? No, we have this concept of division of labor, right? Where you can have different people with their responsibilities. Take functions to be people who can perform different responsibilities. Now, whenever you need one person to do its own job, you call its name. So if I want to add now, I know I already have somebody that is in charge of adding. All I need to do is call its name. Oh yeah, add, come and do your work. If I want to greet, I know I already have somebody in charge of greeting. The name is greet. So I'll call it greet, do your greet. Once I call his name, he knows what to do because we have coded it to do what it should do. Do you catch that phrase there now? All right.
Yes.
Now, I think what I can use to explain this more is this. A function is just a piece of code that if you write it, it will not execute unless you call it. Now, whenever you have your code like this, any line of code that starts from the first indentation like this greet, you know, this one, I did not tab it, like how we tab this print and this print inside this function. These lines of code will execute on their own. But you see, these ones that are inside these functions, they will not execute unless you call the function itself, because they are like children of the function. The only time they are permitted to execute is when their parents are being called. Do you catch that? All right.
Okay. I think
If you
so, I have a
Okay.
ask your question.
like, okay, if in your function,
Yeah.
can function, can you define a function totally without using the print?
Boom. That's where we are going to. That's where we are going to. Now, in a real life scenario, you are not going to be printing inside your function. I only printed because that's basically the only thing we've learned how to do so far today. Okay? In a real life scenario, you'll be doing things more complicated than this. Let me show you an example. Let's say we want to add up two numbers in our code, but after adding the number, we want to multiply the result of the addition by 2. Do we catch that? Do we all follow with what I've said?
Yeah.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is, let me comment this line and I will come down. Did you guys notice how I'm commenting? I know some of you will be wondering, maybe I say we should put hash everywhere. Well, if you want to comment, shortcut, highlight all the code you want to comment, hold your control key down if you're on Windows, but if you're on Mac, hold your command key down. Then press /, that / close to your shift key. It will just comment all the line you have copied, you highlighted. So let me show you guys, let me give you guys a typical example of a real life scenario. Now, in real life, when you are using functions, you are not actually going to be printing inside the function. Okay? So now let me explain a problem to you. Now we are going to solve the problem. Now the problem is we want to write a piece of code that will add two numbers together. After adding the numbers, it will multiply the result of the number by 2. So basically what we mean is, if we add 10 and 15 now, that will give us 25, right? We want to double 25 by multiplying it by 2. Now, if you look at our code, we already have a program that is used for adding already. We already have a function that adds number, right? Good. Now, when I want to write my code now, I don't have to do addition again. What I can do is this. Watch this magic. I can say I can say result is equal to add, and I'll pass the two number 10, 15. Then I will now say print result times 2. Did you see that now? Did you see that? Now, we know when we add 10 and 15, what will be the result of 10 and 15? 25, right? But that 25 now will be saved in results. Then when we come down here, 25 will be multiplied by 2. But right now, our code will not work this way if we do it. Why? Because inside our add function, we're actually printing. You know, when you print, it sends the result to the console straight, right? So instead of printing, in real life, what you will do instead of print, you will use a special keyword we call return. That is what you will use in real life. Now, what this return means is that when you are done adding this number, give it to whoever called you. And in this case, who is calling it? Results, right? This is the line where we are calling add. So what this will do is, it will add up the two number, then bundle whatever the result is, store it inside of result here. And then if we run this now, this should work. We should get 50. Did you notice that we got our 50? Now, I'm saying this because in real life, your functions will not be printing. Although you will be printing when you want to test if your function is working or not. But your real code, inside your function, you will mostly be returning. You will mostly be returning. Do we catch that?
So what does that return mean? I'm still on your hands. I'm sorry.
What return is doing is it's telling it that when, for example, okay, let me go back to the division of labor example I gave. Let me say I'm a trader, right? And I have about 5 different boys working for me. One goes to Alaba. Its own job is to go to Alaba, get some things and bring it back. Okay, its own job is, and the one going to Ikeja, his own job is to get to Ikeja, buy some stuff. Now, let me say before, how they used to operate is that the one going to Alaba will go to Alaba. When he buys the things, he will go and sell them straight. The one at Ikeja will go to Ikeja. When he buys the things, he will go and sell them straight. But this time, I'm telling them, please don't sell it again. Return, when you are done buying, return those things you buy to me. Basically, what I'm telling them is, when you are done purchasing, the result of your purchase, that those things you buy, bring them to me. Come and give them to me. That is what return is doing here. It will take the result of what it adds and store it in whatever code it. In this case, who send a message make it add number? She been at this line of code, right? So basically, when it's done adding them, okay, when it's done adding, it will store the result inside these results here. Think somebody wants to join us. Do we catch the joke? So basically, what the return keyword is doing is like sending something out of our function to whatever invoked the function. You know what? Let's don't complicate it. I think this explanation itself is trying to don't complicate it. Just take it to be, give me whatever you calculated. That's what return is doing. Okay? So when you are done doing your work, give me the result. That's what return does. Now, there is a catch to when using return. Make sure that this return is the last line inside your function. Let me show you what I mean. Let me say, besides returning this number, we want to print something. So maybe I want to print inside this function again. I want to print, okay, we have to tab it. I want to print I am working. You know, because of this tab, it shows that it's still inside this function, right?
Yeah.
But did you notice the color of that print? Did you notice an odd color? A color we've not seen before. Guys, did you notice that?
Yeah.
All right. Now, why is that?
Yes.
Why is that? That is because this, whenever a function is executing and it meets the return keyword, it will take that line to be the last line in that function. So any other line you have under it, those code will not execute. And that is why VS Code is warning us that you see this line where you go right here, now only you go execute them. As long as you don't get this point return here, and I will not get to this line, I no go reach there. So what we can do to make this one execute is swap the arrangement. Bring the print up. Did you see that? So keep that at the back of your mind. Whenever you are ever going to have a return, it should be the last line of your function. Although there are some, how do I put it, conditions or some contradictions to that. But when we get there, we'll talk about it. For now, just know that if you're going to have a return, it should be the last code in your function, the last line. Nothing should be under it, because anything under it will not execute. And this is the same thing for all programming languages. You don't have something directly under a return function and expect it to execute. All right, so that's that on functions. Any questions on that? No questions. For the people just joining us, welcome. Although you've missed some, but the recording of this class will be made available. I'm sure it's recording. Good. The recording of the class will be made available, so don't worry about that. No questions? Can we move to the next thing?
Yes, please.
All right. Good.